Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on YouTube? Good morning, everybody. You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a story from Fox Business's lifestyle section. And the title of this article or this story is Older Employees Prefer Working from Home. Will Gen Z and Millennials Want to Return to the Office? So I put up a poll on the community section of the channel today. And it basically asks, what do you think is the best type of workplace for both productivity for the company as well as employee satisfaction or employee happiness? And there were three options. You had the option of fully remote, fully in office, or a hybrid of the two. And we've talked about this topic a number of times over the past months, over the past year and a half of this whole, work from home, remote work experiment. And I've kind of shared my opinion. I think hybrid is kind of the best model, right? I think nothing in life is black and white. And to say fully remote is the best, I don't think that's true. To say in the office all the time is the best, I don't think that's true. I think a hybrid workforce, a hybrid work environment where people, maybe come into the office once or twice a week, once or twice a month, and work remote the rest of the time, or have the option to do what works best for them. I think it kind of brings together the best of both worlds. When you're working in the office, even though the term corporate culture or company culture kind of makes me cringe, there is some truth to it, right? Like, different companies have different cultures. The culture at Apple or some startup is going to be a lot different than the culture at some manufacturing company. And even among companies or workplaces that you guys have worked at, I'm sure you've experienced that even within the same company, the culture at one office or one department can be very different than the culture at another office in another city, or even in another department in the same office. And I think when people are working remote, I think you lose some of that. Again, I hate to say it, but company culture. Also, I think more than company culture, there's kind of a camaraderie, right? Like, when you know the people that you work with, even if you guys aren't best friends, when you talk about what your weekend was like, or you know something about the person's kids, you guys have a better relationship. You're going to work better together. And I know, just from working with clients and things like that, if I work with somebody in person, face to face, I notice communication tends to be a lot smoother than over email or Hangouts or some type of chat system. It's just, there's not so much back and forth trying to understand each other. Things tend to be a lot more clear. So I do think there's benefits to working in office. I also, however, think it's silly that some people are commuting 2, 3, 4 hours a day, wasting time in the car. People are having to get certain clothes ready to go into the office. People are having to pack lunches. This is a lot of wasted time. Also, just little things like I had to get a new washer and dryer recently, and my girlfriend had to wind up scheduling time off to be home to get the washer and dryer installed. People have doctors and dentist appointments. Having a little bit more flexibility to actually live your life is a great thing as well. So I think the hybrid office, or partly remote, partly working in office is kind of the best system. One thing that kind of surprised me was I would kind of expect older employees to be kind of stuck in their ways and want to work in a traditional office, and I would kind of expect millennials and Gen Z workers to be kind of more open to doing something radically different. So this is kind of surprising, although what I think might explain this past Sunday, I got together with some family. It was my grandma's birthday, and my cousin's husband, I think he works for a big insurance company. I think Allstate or State Farm or one of those. And I guess a lot of his team is spread out. Somebody on his team is in Miami, somebody's in Houston, and I think his boss had moved to, I don't know, Atlanta or something like that. And he said his boss is like a year and a half, 2 years from retirement. And while a lot of the rest of the company has gone back, his boss hasn't brought their department back. And he said, he thinks his boss is just kind of content to ride out the last year and a half, 2 years of his career with, State Farm, Allstate, whoever it is, working from home, and doesn't really feel like going back. And he's like, I'm not going to complain until they tell me to come back, or until this guy winds up retiring and I get a new boss who winds up wanting us back into the office. He's like, I'm content working from home. He gets his kids from the bus and everything else. This whole thing is really interesting. This pandemic has kind of forced everybody into a corner and forced everybody to adopt or kind of try out this whole working from home or remote work experiment. It started off as 2 weeks, and then it was 2 months. And here we are, a year and a half later, and I'm surprised how many companies haven't returned to the office. I think where you are in the country, and even whether you're in an urban environment, a suburban environment, or a rural environment, has a big thing to do with it. I know a lot of my friends who work, downtown Chicago in the Loop, you're working in a high-rise office where, a ton of people have to share the same elevators and things like that. And, with all the social distancing and precautions being taken, it would just be a nightmare having to send like one or two people up in the elevator together at a time. Whereas if somebody works in a suburban, office park that's less crowded, you don't have elevators, it may be safer to return to the office earlier. But, I've seen a lot of my friends, we're going back into the office in, May. Oh, no, we're not. Okay, we're going to set a return to office date in September. Back in July, everybody was optimistic. The world was opening back up, and then Delta comes around, and now all these companies are pushing back return to the office to October or December. I think Microsoft and a number of other companies have basically said we're working from home indefinitely or until further notice. They're not even bothering to put a date on it any longer. I think this whole vaccine mandate thing is kind of interesting, right? I think there was a window of time in which employers could have required workers to come back into the office. But I feel like so much time has passed that not only has this become kind of a norm, but also we did an article a couple weeks ago about a couple who, yeah, you guys remember this one? I forget the title of the video. I think it was something about FOMOing into the housing market. But this couple had bought an expensive home in Seattle or outside of Seattle. They had previously both worked in like Seattle or Portland or something like that. Apparently hadn't checked with their employer whether they'd have to come back into the office or remote work would be a possibility going forward. And eventually they were called back into the office. And so, rather than commuting 2 or 3 hours a day, they were going to move back to their city. The wife didn't want to move back. The husband did want to move back, and they're going to wind up selling their house at a huge loss because they're now being called back into the office. And so, as we've seen, a lot of people have moved, relocated, kind of changed their lives, set their lives up around remote work. And so much time has passed that they don't want to return to the office. It almost seems like government and corporations or government and private companies kind of have a vested interest here, right? Employees are like, we don't want to return to the office, and you can kind of use the excuse like, oh, well, some of my fellow employees aren't vaccinated. Well, now with Biden saying that companies with over 100 people are required to mandate vaccines. To me, this whole thing isn't a discussion of vaccines. Are they good? Are they bad? It's a discussion of personal freedoms and how much control should a company have over you. Regardless of how you feel about a vaccine, good, bad, could care less. How do you feel about a company being able to mandate a vaccine? And essentially the federal government can't do this, so they're trying to kind of put it off on private companies to do this for them. To me, that seems kind of wrong. It's almost like if the police officers can't get a search warrant, so they hire a pizza delivery driver to go kick in somebody's door so that they can see in the door and see if there's like a grow up going on. It's kind of government and private companies or government and private citizens getting in bed together to do something that government couldn't do on their own. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but I think by Biden kind of forcing employers to do this, especially bigger employers, they kind of have some shield from, they're not the bad guy making you get a vaccination and come back to work. It's the government who's forcing them to make you get a vaccination. And well, now that everybody's vaccinated, I guess it's safe for everybody to return to work. You guys don't have an excuse to work remotely anymore. And like I said, I think there were a couple windows before too much time had passed, before this became the norm, when companies could have just called employees back into the office. But now we're seeing surveys, anywhere from 40 to 77% of employees say they're either going to quit or look for a new job if they're forced to return to the office. Whole thing is kind of interesting. Another thing we've talked about before, and I feel very strongly about, is I think we as a society have a very skewed idea of what work is and why we pay people for work. Yes, there are certain jobs, certain occupations, certain industries where somebody needs to be there a certain time, right? Like if you run a retail store or a restaurant and your store or your restaurant is open from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, there's no such thing as Jimmy finishes work in 6 hours so he can go home. If customers come, somebody has to be there for those 12 hours between 9 and 9. However, in a lot of other jobs, office jobs, more creative jobs, marketing jobs, things like that, why are we paying people? Are we paying somebody for their time? Are we paying somebody for 8 hours a day and we just want somebody's butt to be in a seat from the hours of 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night? Or are we paying people for a service? Are we paying them for some certain task? Are we paying them for productivity? If I've said this before, if Timmy can finish his work in 3 hours and Johnny takes 8 hours to do his work, should Timmy be able to go home in 3 hours? And I think when it comes to working from home, we see a lot of companies who are putting spyware and devices on people's computers to make sure that their mouse is moving, to make sure that their keyboard is moving. I saw some company recently came out that has your webcam take a picture of you like every 30 seconds, and it all appears like on a board that everybody at the company can see, so that people can snitch on their coworkers if they're not continuously working throughout the day. I think it was Apple or some other company wanted to put webcams in people's homes to make sure that they were working. And I saw one of the employees was quoted as saying, look, I'm paid to do a job. I'm not paid to do a live stream from my living room. Like, this is fucking crazy, and I'm not going to I'm not going to go along with this. And I think it kind of begs the question, why are we paying people? Are you paying somebody to sit in front of a computer from 9 to 6? Or are you paying somebody for, to bring in so much money for a certain task, for a certain level of productivity? And if you are paying somebody for that, do you really care whether it takes them 3 hours to do or 8 hours to do? And I think as a society, the whole world of work and this whole work from home, remote work experiment isn't really going to run smoothly until we decide exactly why we're paying people. In terms of older workers wanting to continue working from home and younger workers wanting to return to the office, I think remote work in a lot of people's minds was like a dream come true. And I think a lot of people have realized that, they kind of miss seeing their coworkers. They miss the routine of grabbing coffee in the morning, getting lunch at their favorite lunch spot in the city, hitting the gym on the way home from work. I remember when I first came out of college, I got a job with a media buying digital marketing company, and wanted to kind of get some face time with the CEO, wanted to kind of try to find a mentor, and none of those things are going to happen when you're not working in the office. Like, wait, you're going to have a Zoom call with your supervisor or the CEO. It's just not really the same thing as grabbing a drink after work or talking to them in the hallway, or having a smoke with them outside if you guys are smokers, whatever that may be. And I think Microsoft did a survey of workers about a year ago, and it found that especially Gen Z, coming fresh out of college, they had a tough time adapting to the workplace, right? Like, they'd never been in a professional office before. And for anybody who's ever worked retail and then gotten a big boy job in an office or whatever, for me it was really kind of a mind fuck that in retail jobs, if you're supposed to start at 9 o'clock and you clock in at 9:01, you're getting written up. Whereas in an office job, nobody's telling you to take exactly 30 minutes for lunch. Nobody's telling you have to be here at 9 o'clock on the dot, and you can't walk out a second before 6 o'clock. There's a lot more freedom. There's a lot more autonomy. And that's something that you kind of pick up and learn from actually being in the office and seeing people around you. And you're just not going to get that working remotely. And you're also not going to get that FaceTime with the boss. You're not going to get that mentorship. So I thought it was interesting that a lot of Gen Z and millennials feel that their kind of career progression is being stalled by not being in the office. But after all that rambling, let's get into this. Younger workers feel the need to build connections in the office, Muse CEO says. Many workers are preparing to head back to the office for the first time since the start of the pandemic, with the continuing surge of the Delta variant. However, employees are questioning how long certain work policies will last. CEO and co-founder of the online career platform The Muse, Catherine Minshew, joined Fox Business Mornings with Maria to weigh in on a debate between remaining remote and returning to in-person work setups. Minshew suggested a worker's age impacts an employee's work environment preferences, noting a disparity between younger and older generations. The further along somebody is in their career, the more likely they are to have a better work from home setup. They're less likely to crave that in-office environment. And that's one thing as well. If you're fresh out of college, maybe you got roommates, maybe you're living with your parents, and it's not like you have an office or a den that's dedicated for work. So work from home may not really be conducive to your living situation. Whereas a lot of the younger workers are particularly Gen Z and early career millennials. Many of them are still starting out. They feel like they need to establish themselves and build up those connections and mentorship, which is something I just mentioned. Minshew continued to note that it's very interesting to see different employees' perspectives on whether they prefer working remotely or if they want to return to physical office locations. It's a mixed bag, the Muse CEO said. She said she's currently seeing about 37% of people who categorically do not want to go back into an office, and a little over 22% that are excited to go back full time. And that's why I think remote is still good, right? Like, I think it gives people more choice over how they want to work and the style and fashion in which they want to work. It gives a lot of people a lot more flexibility, but you also retain some of those benefits that come with working in an office. Meanwhile, several major corporations such as Amazon, Apple, Google, and Uber have postponed their return to work date until January of 22 due to uncertainty surrounding the Delta variant spike nationwide. Employers are going to feel pressure to reverse course if the situation with COVID continues, Minshew added. Because of Delta, more people are saying, I'm not actually ready to go back into the office. The Muse CEO noted her business tracks workplace sentiments monthly and found that many company executives are concerned whether it's safe to bring staff back into buildings. Many companies are looking at how important they believe in-office collaboration is, how much they feel like some of their employees may seek work elsewhere if they're not accommodating, she remarked. According to the Muse's data, there's a strong preference for flexibility shown when Minshew's company asked job seekers what factors they considered when looking for employment. Remote work or workplace flexibility is consistently very high, she concluded. I think we're not going to see that part of the equation go away. And as always, I always kind of like to read comments of articles and also your guys' comments. So be sure to drop a comment down below. Koloa says, been working from home since DOS and 300 baud modems. Wouldn't have it any other way. Too many perks like sitting here firing snarky remarks at the woke. Bang, gotcha, now get off my lawn. Yeah, and here's kind of an interesting thing that kind of goes to what I said about, why are we paying people? Like, if you were in the office, you might not be in comment sections on articles, on company time writing comments, but because this person's working from home, they can quote unquote fire snarky remarks off. So that's why we need to reevaluate why we're paying people. If this person was in office, the employer is like 9 to 5, I want your full attention. If they're working remotely, it's more, okay, if your job's getting done, I really can't say anything to you about how you do your work or how you spend your day. Let's see. Employers have to decide if it is productive. I do not believe it is. Every generation is mentioned except Gen X in the article. Forgotten yet again. And that's kind of true, right? Like, most of the articles for the past few years have always been about millennials. Millennials are broke. Millennials are this. Millennials are lazy. And now we're starting to see that kind of change to Gen Z. We hear a lot about boomers. But yeah, we don't hear a lot about Gen Xers. The younger ones want to be at the office so they can have someone to show their latest iPhone to. Mature people aren't insecure like that. That's kind of a funny one. Wrong, younger people don't want to go to the office. As a millennial, I can speak for myself and all my friends. Granted, that's not a huge sample size, but it extrapolates well when adding in what I know from work. We don't want to be stifled in the office. We are far more productive on our own time when not mandated to work. There's no evidence to support the myth that spontaneous collaboration happens in offices, that HR nonsense to make you think you must be there. I don't buy this. Work is better done with people you need in a common location. It's easier to get coworkers and colleagues to get things done when you can knock on their door or even get in their face. It's easier to avoid interpersonal cooperation when you are remote. I kind of agree with that. Clearly, you do different work than I or you work differently. I am most productive when I have long blocks of uninterrupted time to dig into a project. Even at the office, it's frowned upon to interrupt people for a quick face-to-face. We use IMs and emails to ask questions so that the responder can remain productive and also answer when they have free time. I am older now. I like being at home a lot more than being around the politics at the office. Millennials need someone to train them. God knows they aren't being taught much useful in college these days that's practical, useful, or illegal. And that's actually kind of a good point, right? Outside of a handful of occupations, you come out of college knowing next to nothing. I mean, if you're an accountant, you probably know how to do bookkeeping. You probably know how to do a payroll. You can go into a workplace and kind of hit the ground running right away. But if you come out of college with a marketing degree or a communications degree or a business degree, you know really nothing going into an office, and you're basically starting from square one in terms of being trained. Go figure, older folks would rather work from home as younger ones work from their place of business. I don't know about most of you, but I met all of my one night stands at work, a few of my girlfriends at work, and finally my wife at work. Can't do that in you basement. No comment. Happy to read 22% of people are going back to work. What about the other 78%? Unhappy. You are not what you do, but the money you earn allows you to become who you want to be. Don't let any filthy socialist slob tell you any different. Let them live in squalor. Okay. So, overall, thought this was kind of an interesting article. I would love to hear your guys' insights. If you own a company and have employees, if you are an employee, let me know what you think. Do you like working in an office? Do you like working at home? And besides, which do you prefer? Which do you actually think is better for kind of a combination of productivity as well as like employee happiness and work-life balance? Do you like fully in office? Do you like fully remote? Or do you think a hybrid model is best? And head on over to the community tab of the channel where you can kind of answer the poll or the survey, and we'll kind of see what you guys think. So drop your comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.